congratulations to you. What masterful lawyering you both did.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're happy for Skylar.
Okay, so let me start off with you, Charles M. If you don't mind, father, son, I'm going to have to use your middle initials in this interview. But Charles M., are you at all disappointed that there was, in fact, one guilty count, albeit the least of the charges?
I meant what I said in the closing argument, and I do believe that there was some community outrage, but I don't think that it was because of Skylar's actions. That said, it was a just jury verdict, and we're happy.
Charles H., do you think that community outrage is going to pour in to tomorrow's sentencing, which is scheduled for 11 a.m.?
Community outrage in what way? Community outrage in the sense they want Skylar to spend 6 months in jail, or they want Skylar released?
Or either. Or do you imagine that there's going to be protests at the courthouse? Or do you imagine that different advocacy groups may be present inside the courtroom to voice their opinions?
I do not.
No. We have received a number of emails and letters and phone calls from people who, frankly, cut across all of the political and socioeconomic spectrums, and after they saw all the evidence and watched the entirety of the interrogations, are fully supportive of Skylar and her family.
As they should be. In my opinion, this was certainly a just verdict, and hopefully Skylar has a bright future ahead of her when this is put behind her. Let's just take a step back. During the litigation phase of this case, was there ever a plea offer by the prosecution? And please, either of you, feel free to answer.
David Fornshell made what he refers to as an offer to make an offer. Technically, there was not a formal offer.
And do you know what that offer to make an offer was?
We had the ability to make an offer to the prosecutor's office that we would plead to the bottom 4 counts, that being involuntary manslaughter, child endangering, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence, in exchange for the aggravated murder being dismissed. We talked to Skylar at length and her family because the scariest, obviously, of the indictment was the aggravated murder, which carried a mandatory sentence, which was life in prison. And Skylar said she could not plead to something that she didn't do, and she was willing to risk putting her life in the hands of 12 jurors because she couldn't plead to something she didn't do.
Well,
mind you,
yes, sir.
That your viewers understand that it wasn't our idea. They wanted to know whether she would be willing to take that deal. So really, it was an offer.
Yes, sir. And was this discussed? Because we thought that there were some plea discussions happening. I think it was day 2 of the trial, or maybe the end of day 1. Did that happen? Am I right with the time frame?
No plea discussions during trial whatsoever.
Okay, so when did all of this offer to make an offer occur? Was it before the trial?
It was before the trial.
About a month before.
Okay, so now this case started essentially in July of 2017. From July of 2017 to a month before trial, was there ever any plea negotiations?
No.
David Fornshell and I did speak, but no formal offers or really requests made by our office either.
And Skylar has always maintained her position was that she buried a stillborn baby, nothing more, nothing less. Is that right?
Absolutely. From the moment she saw Dr. Boyce.
That's right. So, and that was July 12, 2017.
Dr. Boyce being the second.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, yes. So, she saw Dr. Andrew, who in fact delivered her on, and then she saw him on April 26th, and then of course saw Dr. Boyce on July 12th when she in fact made that admission. Now, one question mark that a lot of us have had here, and that is Skylar's Skylar's mother, who was on the prosecution's witness list, who was sequestered during all of the trial, or most of the trial, at least the testimony, and then she was not called by the prosecution. Can you tell us why?
You'll have to ask the prosecutor.
Okay, well, we're going to try to get them on too. Okay, so you don't have an answer to that. Thank you. That's completely fair. Did you, sir, Charles H., did you ever consider calling the mom?
We didn't think it was necessary to call the mother.
Understood. So the crux of this case, and you started off by talking about it, are these confessions or these interviews or interrogations, however you want to couch it. And Skylar spoke to the police on 2 occasions, and it was July 14th of 2017 and July 20th of 2017. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you filed a motion to suppress those statements or those interviews, but then you withdrew the motion to suppress. Can either of you just explain what happened with that?
We didn't think that the law was in our favor on the motion to suppress, and so we withdrew the motion.
Okay, and now, at some point, because, and it's very convoluted, you know, our viewers understand that the first anthropologist hired by the state, Beth Murray, first said there was burning of the bones, and that was, we think, in July of 2017, and then perhaps a month later, she retracted that statement, said there was no burning, but it was already out, that issue of burning, that very prejudicial issue of burning the baby was out in the public. The police had that information and perhaps based their entire second interview on that misinformation. At any point, did you consider strategically trying to remove that issue of burning? You know, use that as an argument that this was so prejudicial, it was completely fabricated, it wasn't true, and was there any way to remove it from the trial, to sanitize this trial without the burning issue?
Go ahead.
We wanted to keep it in there. It was so ridiculous. It was scientifically impossible. It called everything into question. It was ridiculous.
It proved a false confession, which is very rare. False confessions do happen. It's just rare to be able to prove them. DNA evidence has proved a number of false confessions, and in this case, this burning nonsense, which is a scientific impossibility, proved the false statements that Skylar made to the police in a manipulative interview.
Absolutely. In fact, the science says that 2 out of 3 juveniles who confess are false confessions. So that was a huge victory, I think, not just for you independently, not just for Skylar, but for the law. It is. Are you surprised that the prosecution barely cross-examined the false confession expert? Either of you.
I don't have an opinion as to that.
Charles M.
He testified false confessions happen. He testified that the Reed method can induce a false confession, and that's true. I don't know what else you'd ask the false confession expert.
Well, it's your job as a prosecutor, right? I mean, your prosecutor is to cross-examine. Your job as a lawyer is to cross-examine an expert, and there are decades upon decades of science and law that question false confession or validate false confessions. But the point is, the prosecution did not cross-examine that witness, and to some of us lawyers, we found it quite shocking.
Well, let me say this, and that is the judge told us ahead of time that he was going to limit the testimony of Professor Hirsch.
Ah, okay.
And the judge was correct as far as the law in Ohio. And my guess, and it's just a guess, is that the prosecutor may have been afraid that maybe they would open the door where Professor Hirsch could talk about how 150 exonerees in the past few years based on DNA evidence, which is rock solid scientific evidence, where those people people had actually confessed.
That is right, sir. Actually, so
I think that they were afraid to give it to them.
yeah, no, you're right. I think this is the statistic I have that is since 1989 in DNA cases, 27% were discovered to be false confessions. So you're absolutely right. And thank you for that explanation. I think it's really important because we have wondered what happened there because it seemed quite odd. Do you think the verdict in this trial and the endorsement of this false confession will help to eradicate the Reed technique?
Well, as you evidently probably know, it sounds like you've done your research. I think there are some police departments that refuse to use that technique because of the number of false confessions it produces.
Now,
The
you...
Innocence Project
Sorry.
has been doing a lot of work letting the public know that false confessions exist. 20 years ago, this would have probably been a completely different case because people did not believe that false confessions happened. And with DNA evidence, podcasts, making a murder, that has started to change the public perception of false confessions, which was very helpful.
Absolutely. When I was a criminal defense attorney in New York, and that was not that long ago, I wasn't able to get a false confession expert to testify. I wasn't allowed. So things have dramatically changed, and this case, I think, is really going to help the progress with false confessions. Now, you, both of you did something very unique in your defense, and that is calling character witnesses. And we don't see that a lot in criminal cases. And can you just explain a little of your thought process in deciding to call several character witnesses on Skylar's behalf?
Well, maybe in the cases you're talking about, you might not have had a great
Exactly.
client and you didn't have any character witnesses.
You're right.
But in this particular case, I mean, they were trying to paint this little girl as a cold-blooded murderer, just changed with it. And so we had to show who she really was through those character witnesses.
And what was also so interesting is that they didn't have anything on rebuttal. There was no human being out there that seemed to be available to the prosecution to come in and say anything bad about Skylar. So you both successfully called witness after witness who had really no stake in this game to say really just wonderful, lovely things about Skylar Richardson. And let me ask you, how is Skylar right now at this moment?
Skylar was, as you know, her bond was revoked. We both talked to her individually. I am sure that she has a sigh of relief that she was not convicted of those top 3 charges. I can't imagine the intense pressure that has been on her for 2 years, and now lifted.
It was really...
She was crying when I talked to her, but she said they were happy tears.
It was very moving. Charles M., I saw you put your arm around her, and our viewers are watching that, and Charles H., your hand was just tussling her hair. It was really a touching moment for all of us here in the newsroom and our viewers, and it was just so raw, emotions clearly pouring out of her after this 2-year trauma that she's been going through. Her bond was revoked, and the cuffs were put on her, and she was taken to the jail, sentencing tomorrow at 11 a.m. Was there any way for you to argue that she remain at liberty for this evening?
You can argue it. Judge Oda has a standard protocol in every jury verdict case, and that is that bond is revoked upon a conviction, even if the conviction were to be on a lesser offense like a misdemeanor. That's just his protocol, and every judge is entitled to have their own protocol.
Thank you for explaining that, because I think that is something our viewers have been wondering, is why she had to be taken out. But it is important to know that that is the judge's procedure, and that was certainly followed. And she seemed to take it very well. She had a lot of strength visible on her face. Is she okay? I mean, was she okay with the idea of spending yet another night in jail? I know she had earlier, before the trial, when she first was arrested, spent a few nights in jail.
I don't remember how long she spent in jail, but she has spent some time in jail because of the indictment.
Okay.
Obviously, we prefer her not to have been taken to jail, but that, as I said, that's just standard protocol in the court.
Now, a lot of testimony came out about her relationship with her mother. You know, there's a lot of controversy regarding their relationship. Have you spoken to her mother about Skylar's eating disorder?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a big part of our case, too.
Does the mom regret? Does Skylar's mother regret, urging her weight loss on, or her exercise methods on? Does the mom have any regrets for any of her behavior?
Absolutely. Hindsight is 20/20, and looking back at what went on there, she feels horrible.
Does the mom?
She's a good mother.
Does the mother realize that Skylar? Did the mother realize at the time that Skylar had an eating disorder? I'm sure she knows now, but did she know then?
The evidence during the trial was very clear. Her mother and father were very concerned when the eating disorder began in 8th grade, and I believe in 9th grade they started taking her to a psychologist where she was treated for a couple years.
Do either of you believe that the mother knew that Skylar was pregnant?
No.
No.
She had suspicions, without question.
Okay.
But I think that they were quelled. I think that she believed Skylar couldn't be pregnant after she got a call from the pharmacy that birth control was ready on April 26th or 27th.
Right. Yes. Gentlemen, can I ask you please to stick around after this quick commercial break? We have taken a commercial, but we appreciate, we know you're both very tired, and we just appreciate just a little more time. Our viewers would really like